Hey everyone. Thank you very much for having me. This is a lovely conference. It's my first time in Freiburg, or my first time at Smashing, so I'm very, very happy to be here. It is lunchtime and you're listening to me. Thank you. And I hope I'll make it worth your while. So yeah, my name is Christophe. I'm sorry for the weird emojis. This was designed on Windows and runs on a guest session on a Mac, which apparently comes at emojis with a vengeance. They're Unicode standards, so why actually abide by it? So yeah, I come from Paris, even if I don't speak like this, so you can't immediately peg me as French. But I'm actually a bona fide certified French person from Paris. I run a small company called Delicious Insights, specialized in training on developer technologies. So you got like a number of these. And I'm a complete JavaScript, and generally programming language geek, and JavaScript and TypeScript enthusiast. I contribute to language, contribute to libraries from the times where dinosaurs roamed the earth, apparently. And so just, this is probably not news to many of you. This might be news to some of you. JavaScript, ECMAScript, I was delighted to hear some speakers earlier in this conference actually use the term ECMAScript. That's the actual official name of JavaScript because it's standardized by this standards body called ECMA. JavaScript itself is what we all say, or we say JS, right? But fun fact of a sort, in the US, JavaScript is actually a trademark of Oracle Corporation, where technologies go to die, apparently. And so, you know, so yeah, they actually have the official JS Twitter handle, and whenever they use it, the community just smashes them into the ground. Inside ECMA is this entity called TC39. It's been mentioned already, Technical Committee 39. They are the caretakers of a number of standards. ECMAScript itself, ECMA 262 standard, JSON, the INTL API, which is awesome, should absolutely use it. And they are, as it was mentioned yesterday, I believe, currently trying to standardize some extra stuff that is slowly coming back into their purview, which doesn't have yet standard numbers assigned. So you might not know about the TC39 standard process. It's a 5-stage process. It's a bit like the stages of grief. And it used to be very opaque, and nobody would actually have a view into how JavaScript evolved, and JavaScript used to evolve like very slowly. ES5 was 10 years after ES3. There was no ES4. That's a horror story of its own. Come and find me. People actually, it ended with fists. Involving possibly Douglas Crockford, who sort of deserved it. And so now it's, ever since the long called ES6, which is actually ES 2015, 6 years after ES5, it's been a yearly release cycle, and it's all transparent and open on GitHub, github.com/tc39. You'll find absolutely everything. They meet every 2 months, odd months, so January, March, and so forth, and for a couple days, and just move the language forward. And anybody can actually participate. Anybody can send stuff. The 5 stages are the strawman stage. So anybody, like, you can create a new GitHub repo right now and say, like, I wish I had like an actual unicorn operator, like the Unicode emoji. So it won't look the same on Windows and Mac, apparently. And to do something. And that's an actual stage 0 proposal. When you get one TC39 member, that's about 40 permanent members plus guests, to champion that proposal, to actually present that proposal at a TC39 meeting and agree to be the one leading the work on it, you get to stage 1. There's a lot of crap at stage 1. The barrier to entry for stage 1 is very low, and at the very least, half of stage 1 will never see the light of day. Some has been vegetating at stage 1 for 5 years without progress. But then, at some point, you get much further. The spec text is done. That's a very weird formalism to write stuff into. And all the critical aspects are done. And then you're reaching stage 2. And stage 2 is, you're pretty much guaranteed to see that coming your way, become official at some point. Stage 2 is where stuff like Babel and TypeScript and all of those start getting interested, start creating polyfills or syntax transforms for it. That's where browsers start getting interested. Some stuff is like pretty much guaranteed to garner enough interest that even at stage 2, browsers will natively implement it. Stage 3 is the candidate spec. So at this point, spec-wise, it's all good. It's all done. It's all completed. What do we miss for the final stage, for stage 4? We miss something super important, and that's very different from what you would see in CSS or anything. To actually become official, to get to stage 4, you have to have like 2 native implementations in the wild. That means that 2 of the major JavaScript browsers must natively implement it already for it to actually become official. So it's sort of like taking this the other way around. And then you need to have full test coverage, because there's this test suite called test262 after the standards number, and you have to have full test coverage for that feature. So it's kind of weird. By the time a feature becomes official, usually you find someone telling you, well, it's been around in like Chromium and V8 and everything for like 5 years. And you're like, OK. So you can always like use it even like ahead of the curve, usually. Some stuff has been around in V8 or SpiderMonkey, which is the JavaScript engine on Firefox, sometimes like 3 or 4 years ahead of becoming official, because it was like of a particular interest to that browser vendor or that JavaScript engine vendor. Usually, you will not hear me say JavaScript Core or Squirrelfish Extreme, which is the JavaScript engine for behind Safari, because Safari is usually very much ahead of the curve in CSS and very much behind the curve on anything that challenges the App Store. Okay, so anything that empowers PWAs, usually Safari is like 6 years behind everybody. Okay. So a quick refresher. I won't tell you about everything that recently came by, because there's a lot of it, and many of those recent features actually had some spotlight in the community, in the news sources, the newsletters, and Dev2 or whatever you're following. But some of these didn't get, in my view, enough spotlight. And I'd like to shine a little bit of light on these just now. String.matchall. So full disclaimer, I like regular expressions. And people asking why are still in denial. The regular expressions are sometimes the right tool, the best tool. Not always. Do not write parsers as regular expressions. But sometimes regular expressions are really the best tool, and then you want to have as much regular expression power as you can. JavaScript has historically been lagging behind compared to languages like Ruby or Python or Perl, obviously, but Perl is kind of weird. It's a write-only language, right? You can write it, you can't read it again. So they actually have like an opt-in stuff called use English, which is not like the default. So it's kind of weird. But yeah, there's a lot of these features that are related to regular expressions. It's OK, I'm fine. Matchall especially is one thing where you historically had to choose when you wrote regular expressions that had what we call capture groups, so that isolated parts of your match. You had to choose between getting those parts or getting all the matches. You couldn't get all the matches and for every match all the parts. So it was like a dilemma. You could do it, but like sort of manually using sticky positions and stuff. It sort of sucked. The ergonomics were pretty terrible. And now Matchall lets us do that. It's an iterator. It's not an array, because it can be costly depending on your source. And it lets us do that. We can actually get all the group details, group names, obviously, because we have named capture groups now, and all the matches at the same time. We don't have to pick between both. Anyone using promises? Probably anyone doing JavaScript uses promises at some point, like the fetch API or whatever. And if you're still using only like good old callbacks, you're sort of doing wrong. Okay, that's a whole other talk. But in ES 2015, we got like 2 what are called promise combinators. Okay, so promise.all and promise.race. They have specific semantics. The shortcut, promise.all shortcuts on the first failure, promise.race shortcuts on the first settlement. And we're missing 2 other scenarios. Not shortcutting at all and just getting to the end of it all. Or shortcutting on the first success, right? So pitting multiple competing strategies against each other and seeing which one succeeds first, basically. So we have had those combinators for a couple of years now. Promise all settled, doesn't shortcut. And promise any shortcuts on first success. So these cover pretty much all the scenarios now. Anybody here knows about @? OK, let's do it the other way. Anybody not knowing about @? OK. So it's a good thing I'm here. So you know how You know about negative indices? Negative indices are actually something we get in many languages, like Ruby and Python and many others. And they're really cool. They're from the end, right? -1 is like the last item, and -2 is the one before that. The penultimate item, it's called. And we can use that in slice and in splice, but you can't use that between the square brackets. Because the square bracket is what's called the indirect indexing operator, and it's not specific to arrays. It actually works on any object. You have an expression in there, it's evaluated, converted to a string or a symbol, and used to access the property. And if the property does not exist, you get undefined. So it won't work any other way just for arrays. There's no reason. But we hate doing myArray, square brackets, myArray.length -1, for instance, because it's like, what is this, 1970? And despite being old, I wasn't even born in 1970. And so we have @ now, which works on all the built-in iterables, so arrays, typed arrays, strings. It does use, you can use positive indices, but you can use negative indices as well. So your last item would be .at -1, for instance, which is much simpler and much smaller, which is kind of neat. Find from last. We've had for a long time options that let us go from the end, basically. We had last index off, right? We had reduce write. We had all those APIs that let us work from the end of the sequence. And we've had, since ES5, find and find index, which are really cool. You pass a predicate. So a predicate is a function that just says yes or no about its argument, right? And they're really useful. Probably many of you have written like a find call at some point or stuff like that. But they go from the start. When you go from the end, it's not, sometimes you need to go from the end, and then you're kind of stuck. You either do it by hand, rolling like a C-style digit-based loop, all right, because it's 1963, apparently. Or you're reversing the array, which is very costly to do a find after that. So we finally have find from last, and find last index, which are just like find and find index, but from the end. And so we got these couple of like super bright stars in our galaxy, and you can just like use the predicates, except it goes from the end, and it's not costly. Change array by copy. So I'm a big fan of functional programming. I do Haskell, I do Lisp, I do many of those languages. And I've been very glad to see functional programming paradigm just ooze into the JavaScript world more and more, right? We've got stuff like Immer and new reactivity promises. Redux introduced a lot of people to immutable programming. We've got some amazing stuff, which I'll be talking about later, called records and tuples coming to JavaScript pretty soon. Native immutable data structures, all of this. So it's pretty great. The array API is weird, right? The array API has a lot of mutative APIs, so APIs that actually modify the array in place, and non-mutative APIs that just derive a new array. And sometimes those are not the ones you think they do. Like sort is mutative, okay? Concat is immutable, which is weird. Like in most languages, concat actually modifies the array, not in JavaScript. And we've been needing some of the traditional mutative APIs to exist as their immutable counterparts. Like reverse modifies the array. We'd like a reverse that just derives a new array. Same for sort. Same for splice, and same for the square brackets. Sometimes I want to say, I want that exact array, except position X, where it would be that new version, like when you write a reducer function or stuff like that. And I'm just done translating to French, the official French React docs, for instance. And they have this entire page about like altering state where there are objects or arrays, and they still go with the old-fashioned code, because this is fairly recent. This has become official this year. For example, with or to reversed or to sorted, they've actually gone through a fast-track process, that proposal, change array by copy, because it was introduced last fall. And it reached stage 4 in like 4 months, which is unheard of, because it's like super trivial to implement. And so it's been around, you know, like the first time the TC39 mentioned it was like almost exactly a year ago, and it's been native in browsers ever since March or something. So it's kind of weird. But it means, like in Node, for example, you would need Node 20 to get that. Okay, so the latest LTS. It's turning LTS next month, and so we've had that. And with in particular is really cool, because every time you had to do an immutable version where you would just change one position, it would look ugly. You'd have to do like a slice, concat, slice, it's just like yuck. And now you can just say with, and there you go, which is really nice ergonomics. Okay, so that's recent stuff that I think didn't get enough spotlight. Now let's talk about stuff that is coming, right? Ooh, sneak peeks. That's my version of the mystery speaker. And nowhere near as good looking as Zach, but you'll have to make do. So ES 2024, quite likely, hence the question mark, array from a sink. So that's a helper. That's a utility when you have what we call an async iterable. For example, a data stream or set timeout, set interval event stream or stuff like that, or even a click event stream. Any sort of async iterable, you would, if you wanted to just consume it entirely and turn it into an array, you would have to manually write a for wait loop or stuff like that and push inside it. We're getting a utility just like array from a sink, which is a promise. Array from a sink, you're iterable, you await it, you get the entire set as array, which is kind of neat. This is going to change a lot of the data processing we write in JavaScript. This is currently at stage 3. There's a really solid chance it will achieve stage 4 before next March, making it feature freeze in time for ES 2024. We have a lot of, there are 2 proposals. We have a lot of new set methods. So we have had this set collection type ever since ES 2015, which is like a mathematical set. So unique values, no specific order, iterable. And some of the traditional set operations become available. So the set API just gets extended with intersection, union, difference, disjunction, all of that, which is kind of cool. I'm more interested in a proposal called iterator helpers, which provides a ton of methods we would usually go to Lodash FN, FX or to Ramda for, that provide us all the take, drop, filter, limit, map, and so forth, but just working on any iterator at all, including your own iterators, anything that implements the iterability protocol. And you can just call those like values or filter or take or what have you, generative functions, anything that iterates suddenly gains access. A bit like if there are Rubists among you, a bit like the enumerable module, basically. You gain access to like a wealth of new features that work on anything that is iterable, including your own implementations. So that's one more nail in the coffin of Lodash, so to speak, right? So you can just keep trimming those bundles. Array grouping, same thing, actually, one more nail in Lodash coffin. Sometimes you have those arrays, you need to group them by some criterion, like group them by age, or group the data in the array by age, or group them by name, or whatever. Same thing, we used to go to libraries or roll our own implementation. This is the beginning of today's schedule, if I'm not mistaken. And you could group them by type, so you'd get this as a regular object. And if you're grouping by something that does not map to a valid property name, so either a string or a symbol, you can group to map, and that will turn it into the same thing as a map, where keys can be any type. So again, cool utilities that are coming up our way. This is big. This is very big. Do I have like some pointer or something? Yeah. See this? Using? Sorry for the people online who might just get the slides and not the... But any C-sharpist among you? Like, yeah. A crypto C-sharpist. So yeah, that's one of the things, just like async await, that JavaScript stole shamelessly from C# because it was a good idea. But we actually have that in C#, we have that in Python. Some Java people, no, probably not. This is a web conference, right? Yeah. So a couple of Java people who have had try with the sources for a very long time, which is extremely useful. The idea is that the language actually provides a syntax to guarantee resource cleanup for you. So when a scope just gets garbage collected by the system, any resources that you allocated in there is guaranteed to be cleaned up, regardless of an exception throwing or something. And it will do that in the proper reverse order, including if some of the resources throw while cleaning up, the other ones will clean up anyway. And so it just removes a ton of verbosity and sort of like boilerplate code whenever you use that. And so many of the promise-based APIs, because that's based on a weight, you do using a weight. And many of the promise-based API, it actually also works with synchronous APIs. But any API that actually allocates some resource, so like timer intervals, event listeners, streams, sockets, all of that. It would implement those two new well-known symbols, symbol.dispose for synchronous operations, symbol for async dispose for asynchronous operations. And they would become out of the box compatible with that using keyword. So you would start whatever scope you're interested in with using instead of like const or let to declare these. And they will automatically get properly cleaned up, guaranteed, at the end of when the scope is garbage collected, when the closure is freed and stuff like that. So it's really cool. It's implemented already in Node, for example, that the next node has async dispose and dispose wherever it makes sense for all the APIs. Many of the web APIs, like the Fetch API and all that, handle this as well. And TypeScript 5.2 has it, and Babel 7.22 supports it if you need to like downgrade to like an earlier version, because you can totally transpile it to some more verbose code, right? So that's going to be like a real boon for simplifying good cleanup and just removing some extra memory leaks you might have in some advanced code. Import-export attributes as well. You might have seen that for a long time with the assert keyword, which was what we call import assertions. Sort of dead in the water now, replaced by this one, which is more wide-reaching. And that lets you, when you're doing an import, that lets you express some expectations or provide some metadata to that import. So you could say, I'm importing this thing, I'm expecting it to be valid JSON, and I don't want it to be like interpreted as something else. Or I'm providing some extra metadata. So that would be with that static syntax on static imports and as the second optional argument of the import as a function for dynamic imports. And the spec actually suggests matching upgrades for the web worker constructor when you're doing a web worker instantiation of a script, or the HTML script tag, so that you could have like script with, in addition to type, to get the same kind of guarantee. And the idea is that when the engine loads that thing, if it doesn't match assertions you have, it will throw, it will refuse to actually initialize the script. So there's a security safeguard here. And otherwise, you can just associate like predefined metadata, either custom metadata for your JavaScript engine or even application metadata, because you've got some API that lets you introspect those metadata in the modules you're loading. So you can do, I can see frameworks doing some custom stuff in there. Probably Next.js at some point is going to use that for extra metadata in the RSC implementation or something. Again, I like regular expressions, and I'm not sorry. So you might know of the U flag for regular expressions that came with the S2015, U for Unicode. General idea, if you're using regular expressions on any sort of content that is originating from the user, use Unicode flags so that all of your, not only do you get a lot of like extra useful syntax, like Unicode property escapes, for instance, or stuff like that, but basically even basic stuff like letter or white space or everything will just work better on like Unicode characters, like complex letters, surrogate pairs, stuff like that. The V flag is an extension. It sort of replaces the U flag if you need that extra power it brings. And that lets us do what we call nested classes, and therefore a class difference or class intersection. So if you don't like regular expressions, you're going to be fine. A class is just regular expression lingo for saying all the possibilities for a single character. Okay? So at that point in the text, there's a single character in a Unicode sense, and here's everything that I allow at that position in the text, or that I'm looking for at that position in the text. That's what we call a class in regular expressions. And we used to be able to only describe a class as a single unified definition, like this has to be a decimal number, or this has to be an emoji, or this has to be anything in the Greek script, for instance. And now we can actually combine these. We can say this has to be a decimal number, but non-ASCII, or this has to be the Greek script, but it has to be, or let's go for something a bit more advanced, like the Khmer script, but it has to be letters, because Khmer has their own digit and their own punctuation as well. So you can use these to very concisely and accurately, because those change all the time, provide like what could be very, very large sets of Unicode code points. So it's really pretty cool that we have that. And when you need that, you can use V instead of U. There you go. Okay. Talking about this, anyone here use named capture groups in regular expressions? I love you people. Those are cool, aren't they? Yeah, those so much more maintainable than digit-based group numbers. But there was a mistake. There was a flaw in the original ES 2018, I think. Was it? No, I'm not even mentioning it. But is that when you had like an alternative using a pipe and you wanted like various possible versions of that data you wanted, and so you wanted to name, obviously only one side of that alternative would match, and you wanted to name the same group on both sides because they're the same data, just different formats you were allowing. You couldn't. You had to name them differently. So it's like, So ES 2024 is very likely going to fix that so that we can say, for instance, it's like date text, and it would say, OK, so date would either be just the year dash the month or the month dash the year. In both situations, that group should be year, you know? And you can finally use the same name on both sides. So that's not like a feature. It's more like a bug fix, right, in the original implementation. Promise with resolvers. This, again, is very likely to make it in 2024. The idea is that promises, by definition, not just in JavaScript, just as an IT concept, are black boxes. When you get handled a promise, you're not supposed to be able to, as a consumer of that promise, you're not supposed to be able to have any impact on what is called its fate. You're not supposed to be, as a promise consumer, able to tell it, succeed or fail. You know, otherwise we'd all say succeed. But you don't have any API for that. You just have the then and the catch and the finally methods to express what you want to do with the outcome. The only way, traditional way in JavaScript to manipulate the fate of that promise is to be in that promise constructor callback and to have access to those reject and, for some reason, resolve instead of fulfill method, and to use them. But it's a narrow scope. It's not very handy sometimes. You need to pass those methods around as event listeners to a ton of things. And many libraries had that same boilerplate code, just exfiltrating those references in the outer scope so that they could use it everywhere. So when you need that, we're going to have promise with resolvers that just is a small utility that does that for you so that you don't feel as kludgy when you need that. There's like an official API, so I guess it's all good. Decorators, yeah, that's like a big question mark, right? I've been betting on decorators next year for like the past 5 years. Who knows? It's like Duke Nukem Forever. You know, it's like, one day, I guess, we'll get decorators. And you're using them already a lot if you're using TypeScript. Who here uses TypeScript? Of course you do, and you should. TypeScript's amazing. But it's still just JavaScript with cherry on top, right? And so, yeah, decorators. The thing is, it takes forever because right before it was going to stage 4, some dork at the back of the room raised his hand and says, hey, here's an edge case nobody thought about with the current design. And everybody was like, dude! And we had to go back to the whiteboard, back to stage 1, and we lost 3.5 years. It was all for the better, though. The new version is so much neater and simpler than the old one. And TypeScript decorators actually had to switch gears because TypeScript is a strict superset of JavaScript. And it's had decorators for a very long time, and they align with the former spec, and now they align with the new spec, and you have like some deprecation warnings when you're using the old spec. So, but decorators is just aspect-oriented programming, just like proxies, very useful in some ways. Some of your frameworks, if some of you here are suffering through Angular, you're using TypeScript all over the place. Some of you using Nest.js, using TypeScript and decorators all over the place. Some frameworks are entirely based on it. Cool. But they might finally become JavaScript native very soon, hopefully. Shadow realms is something most of us won't ever need, but won't ever use directly. But I'm sure you're using CodePen, Code Sandbox, StackBlitz, VS Code.dev, GitHub Workspaces, all of those online IDEs, right? And they need to sandbox execution of your JavaScript on their systems because your JavaScript is not something they want to trust. And for either the right or wrong, I don't care, but they need some really good primitives to actually sandbox that execution. So far, we've had just hacks, like new function kind of thing. But we're actually getting like a really, really good API for this called Shadow Realm. In JavaScript land, a realm is a general execution context, right? And we're actually can use an API and say, here's a script, here's the environment, here's the globals, here's everything, and actually sandbox the execution. Back and forth, not just one shot, two. We can just instantiate the realm and execute as much stuff as we want, get the results, marshal across that stuff. So it's a godsend for these people. It's going to make that so much more efficient, so much smoother, so much less costly to run on their end. So it's really, really cool. OK, beyond. So full disclaimer, no idea when that makes it. It could be next year. It could be 3 years down the line. Just to get you excited. Temporal. Who here knows about Temporal? We just can't wait, can we? Like Luxon, Moment, Data Defense. We can just like strip hundreds of kilobytes from our bundles. Temporal API is amazing. And there's actually a very strong polyfill already for it. But then, you're bringing that whole polyfill with you. And it's basically the end-all, cure-all, be-all of time and date and calendar management. And you know that true friends don't let a friend write a calendar, right? Ever. Like, this is as horrible as it gets. Anything you believe is wrong. Anything. And so here are just a couple examples. Like you got two meetings. First, you have dates without times, so dates in the abstract, right? And then you have times without dates as well, just times that you can combine them together within specific time zones. For example, here's the 1st of January 2020 and the 1st of April 2020 at 10 a.m. And let's get the local, like the absolute time, the absolute spot in time for that meeting on the 1st of January 2020. With that time, 10 a.m., in that time zone, which is the Montreal time zone, and you'll get 1,500 hours UTC, right? Because at that time, Montreal is still in winter time. But if you do it on 1st of April, Montreal is going to be in DST, Daylight Savings Time, so it's actually going to be closer to UTC. So it's kind of neat. They have some really good concept, like a month day, so a month and a day without the year. Birthdays. Like I'm born on the 4th of November. You can compute the year. But I mean, I can use that and just replicate it on specific years to get specific stuff. It has like Thanksgiving, like the 4th Thursday of November. And you can actually express that and get the actual dates anywhere. And sometimes you'll get undefined because not so long ago, even European countries like missed entire months in their calendars when they finally switched back to the Gregorian calendar. Look at this. I love this. OK, so here's like a time zone time. OK, so this is in Hong Kong. This is the departure of a flight in Hong Kong, 11:55 a.m. And maybe I have the arrival of that flight. So 9:50 in their time zone in America, in Los Angeles. So I'm like, OK, so how long is the flight? And I get a temporal duration that tells me it's 12 hours and 55 minutes. Okay, that's the string representation, but I get that. Same, I go like, God, I got the departure time and I got a flight time, and I know where it's landing. What time will it be there when it's landing? And I'm like, OK, so 14 hours, 10 minutes. That's Hong Kong to Paris. 14 hours, 10 minutes. And I'm like, OK, so here's the departure. Here's the time in Paris. What time will it be? There you go. It's like, and it's just like, you have no idea. It's like 0.1% of the feature set of Temporal. Temporal is amazing. And here's my mandatory typo, coleciton, apparently. I just noticed it. So we got ways to normalize collections. So you can have like maps, except every time you put some stuff in there, it will normalize the value, the key or the value for you automatically. For example, here that would be like HTTP headers. We normalize them to lowercase. Same for mplace. Mplace is sort of upsert. You know the upsert operation, where if it's there, it updates it. If it doesn't, it inserts it. It's an operation you have in a lot of data layers. And we can have that for maps as well. You can just call the terrible name, mplace, for some reason, not upsert. Probably MooTools again. And you provide like an insert callback if you want to handle the insert cases and what the default value would be, and an update callback so that you can add that stuff. Actually, insert should return 1, not 0. But iterator range, because honestly, we use that all the time. Like, I want a sequence from this to this by steps of this. And we always write that ourselves, finally getting iterator range. Records and tuples, native, immutable, deep, immutable data structures in JavaScript. So Records are the equivalent of objects, deeply immutable. Tuples are the equivalent of arrays, deeply immutable, easily convertible both ways, from immutable to mutable and the other way around, compatible with all the traditional API, compatible with JSON parse immutable, which will automatically return it for us. And you can tell those automatically those literals because they just have the hash sign before the opening curly or the opening square bracket. And you already have a tutorial and a playground and stuff, and it's going to be amazing. Stuff like Vue3 reactivity, all of that, Immer, it's just going to be so much faster. That's my final one. I'm slightly over time. Object pick, object omit, again, Lodash. Like, you want some properties from an object. How many times do we do this? Here's an object. I just want an object with properties A, B, and C. I have to destructure them and then make a new literal out of them, like yuck. We have object pick and object omit. We might even get syntax for it, like this. We might. Still stage one. I'm so crossing my fingers. Please cross your fingers with me, out of comma. I'm so hoping to get this. Slipping on the pipeline. This has been on stage one forever. All of us who love functional programming of F# or anything, we just want that because it makes a lot of chain processing so much easier to read and to refactor. It's actually at stage 2 now, so it's actually moved, but I'm not holding my breath for anything before 2025, I guess. But there's already a Babel transform for it. You can actually use it through Babel already. It's going to confuse the hell out of the new recruits, but you can use that as a hiring filter, I guess. And pattern matching, same thing. Truly legible regexes, we might get that finally. I missed that from Ruby. We can actually have long-winded regular expressions with comments and non-significant white space, so you can actually read these regexes and maintain them. It's finally coming here. It's currently stage 1 because it's just very recent, but it's actually moving forward very fast. Right now, you could do that with a library, stuff like xregexp, for instance, that does that. And terrible emojis because of OS change, but thank you very much for your time.
Wonderful, Christoph. So much stuff happening, and we have so many questions. Two of them.
Do we? Okay.
Oh, we do.
Okay.
Well, two of them came. Well, one of them came quickly. The other came a bit later.
Async. That's async for you.
Yeah. So Paul is wondering. Please tell us more about ECMAScript 4.
Oh, I actually have a train at 4:50, so I'm not entirely sure. So long story short, it was overly ambitious. ES4 had static typing, for instance. ES4 had the current scope of TypeScript, plus immutability, plus just about everything. Basically, they had not learned to say no. So the ES4 scope was enormous, and they had been working overnight ever since ES3, so 1999, to move this forward. And there was a lot of contention. Back in the day, TC39 had Douglas Crockford, the guy who invented JSON, and decided not to allow comments in it, for instance. Because apparently, he wrote JavaScript, the good parts, whose unofficial titles, except for me, you're all morons. Okay? And so, yeah, there was a lot of animosity, let's say, in the group, and it wasn't conducive to real work. So at some point, the scope was way too broad. The committee was too large. There was a lot of contention. There were factions. And from what I hear, some meetings ended with fisticuffs, really. So what happened is they decided to really trim it down to the tiny part of consensus that everybody agreed on, which fortunately included property descriptors, and that gave us ES5, which acted as a springboard for Babel to be able to transpile almost everything, except proxies and atomic, but pretty much everything else. Mm-hmm. Everything else was just shelved and got back to the drawing board as what we should work on, what should be released. A lot of ES4 ended up in stage 1, really, and that still remained kind of opaque until ES 2015 when the process really opened up and became transparent. But yeah, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was really something, apparently. you did not want to be in a room during the ES4 TC39 meetings.
Okay, if that's not exciting, I don't know what is. Also, we have questions. Question from Chris: what is the current state of immutable data structures, records and tuples?
So records and tuples. They're moving forward. They're still at stage 2. Stage 2 to stage 3. Actually, there might be stage 3 now. I don't remember. Let me. Records and tuples. They're at. Okay, I'm way too myopic to read this. They're at stage 2, but there's definite interest, and they're actually not that hard to implement. So I know there's actually already implementation work in V8 for this. It's not done yet, but I think there are a couple really edge cases still being hashed out by the committee. But there's enormous interest for this, if only because Vue reactivity or React reactivity, especially React for Get compiler efforts right now, and many other like Emerge.js and tons of other things. Like immutability and functional programming have like really strong tailwind right now, which is great. I'm all for it. But so that means that, yes, there's a strong working force behind it. Unfortunately, the champions of those two, of that proposal, I believe, are also champions on quite a few other proposals that need, pardon me, some work too. So they can't really dedicate all of their efforts to it, but it's moving forward for sure. Honestly, I don't expect it for next year, if only because it would have to reach stage 4 by March, which seems kind of ambitious right now. But considering there's only like one engine pre-implementing it at this point, but there's a pretty good chance it will become official in 2025. And in the meantime, I believe we have polyfills. So not polyfills actually, but transpilation. So less of a cost in your front-end bundle. So you could probably use that already if you're into it. Most of the time, especially if you're already using stuff like immutable.js, for instance, or stuff like that, you could probably replace it with records and tuples at this stage. Caveat emptor, right? It's still early. It's at stage 2, so the API might slightly change before it reaches stage 3.
We'll see. There's also actually a question that's related to that. Do you think that ECMAScript is, in general, moving more and more towards being a functional language?
Well, JavaScript is a multi-paradigm language, right? We've had like angry people from the back end saying JavaScript is not object-oriented ever, right? Since the get-go, when even JavaScript 1 was way more object-oriented than Java currently is, for instance. It implements all of OOP, almost all of OOP, which traditional OOP does not. It just implemented it in a weird syntactic way because it was formally forbidden to cast a shadow over Java at launch in 1995. So it had to use another way, a detour to get to OOP, and it used prototypal inheritance for that. But it is still moving, I think, towards more functional programming for sure, more immutability, because the use cases for these kinds of data structure and these kind of algorithms are growing, are ever growing. You have to remember that JavaScript, the little language that could, is the only language used in production in every niche of this industry, in every use case. It sort of ironically fulfilled the promise that was originally the promise of Java, right? Write once, run anywhere. And it ended up being JavaScript, for better or worse, in large part thanks to Node.js. And I think what I like is that it's evolving fast, and it's being implemented fast. Honestly, because those are like small proposals, well, small enough proposals, those that actually have significant community interest move forward and reach stage 4 in like anywhere from 1 to, at worst, 4 years. And remember that by the time they become official, they're actually natively usable anywhere, which is not what we get with CSS, for instance. Usually, it's available immediately in Safari, and then you have to wait for quite a while in either Firefox or Chromium. JavaScript is moving forward fast. I hear a lot of people saying, oh, it's moving too fast, there's too much new syntax. And I'm like, don't use it. Write my dad's JavaScript. That's OK. I'm interested in having more tools in my tool belt and use whatever fits, whatever is most efficient at that point. And do not confuse unreadable with I'm not familiar with it. OK? We all know how to write a for loop. To a beginner, the for loop is atrociously unreadable. Doesn't make sense. The instruction pointer jumps all over the place, but we've internalized it. Just like we've internalized a lot of the weird syntax in our languages. It's not they're inherently unreadable. There might be. Some of it is objectively horrible, but not in JavaScript. But it's just like the answer is to upskill your team, not to level, to sort of like put an artificial ceiling on whatever features you're using by the least qualified member of the team. Just upskill everyone. A rising tide lifts all boats and all that.
Right. Well, there's also kind of a question that relates to that, I guess. You're always one step ahead of me, as a wonderful audience is asking questions, which you're kind of replying without actually hearing the question. But one of them came up with, actually, looking again into where the JavaScript is heading in general, do you feel, the question I guess is, where does it leave TypeScript? For example, maturing it like PHP to be stronger typed will make things like TypeScript obsolete and the landscape less complicated and fractured. Do you feel like, where is the role of TypeScript and JavaScript?
Is PHP running in a browser? No, I don't think so. So I'm all for, what I really like, especially in terms of typing this past few years, is that people stopped correlating strong typing and static typing, okay? The issue that I take now with languages like Java, for instance, however much it's improved over the past recent years, is that it comes from a place of rigidity. Like, it's very verbose, it's very rigid. Most of the design patterns are there to actually circumvent that rigidity. You don't often find a JavaScript code base with something like an abstract singleton proxy factory bean or something. You don't need most of that. Only just a few of those 40 original design patterns actually apply universally. And the idea that we can have strong typing and still be dynamic typing is only recent, really, in IT. It's only just in the past few years that we've realized we could retain the dynamicity of languages like Ruby or PHP or Python or JavaScript and still have strong typing guarantees, which for me have mostly like the one universal benefit of it, regardless of your team size or code base size, is tooling, right? Because it just empowers your IDE or anything to just provide you with so much more information and more accurate information. So it has a direct impact on your productivity. TypeScript is a godsend to the TC39 because it's a hard problem, and it's the fact that Microsoft spearheaded and is now driving this very strong, periodized, solid, high-quality effort towards the whole problem space of strong typing in JavaScript sort of frees the TC39 from having to allocate any resources to that, because TC39 has a finite set of resources. We can't tackle all the problem space.
Usually just a couple of people, really, to just...
Maybe more than a couple. The entire set of people working on proposals, even if they're not sitting at the committees, maybe 100 people, part-time for many of them. So there's only so much we can tackle. There's a lot of stuff that stays at stage one, not because we're not interested, but because we don't have the resources to... We have to pick our battles at any given time. So the fact that for that important thing, which is strong typing of JavaScript code bases, for whatever reason, like tooling, turnover, churn of your developer team, code base size, whatever, diversity of skills in your team, actually has like a very strong and sustainable solution in user land, because you don't need it to be supported by the engine. It's totally something that can be done at the tooling side. It's great. TypeScript team, actually, all of the Microsoft representatives at TC39 are from the TypeScript team. And we get along splendidly. TypeScript team loves JavaScript, and TC39 is so fine with the TypeScript team. We're just on a common mission to empower you people to do more in any development niche you're working at, whether it be IoT or web browser or APIs or what have you. And so TypeScript has a bright future. It's evolving super fast. It has new important things all the time. And it has an expressive power in terms of typing that grows all the time. Like last year, we had the satisfies operator, which, for example, is a major boost. And And JavaScript is evolving fast too. So as someone who's mostly working with those languages, I'm very happy that it's not sclerosis. It doesn't have any sort of sclerosis, really.
Okay.
It doesn't frighten me. I don't have JavaScript fatigue. I have framework fatigue.
Okay. Well, talking about fatigue, I think the final question we can wrap up with. It's a very short question, and probably we need a short answer as well.
Yes.
Where the hell does this excitement about regular expressions come from?
So, in short, honestly, I've been in this industry for well over a quarter of a century now, and I've been doing Windows development from before the web and web development and anything, backend, frontend, what have you. So, I've had my hand more times than I can count in the need to extract in an efficient way and with code that doesn't make me want to kill myself specific bits of information from like text garbage mostly. And for many of those use cases, it so happens that regular expressions will do super fast and in like half a line of code what would take 50 lines of utterly buggy and unreadable and unmaintainable code to do in a much slower way. The problem with regular expressions is that everybody uses it and nobody learns it. Nobody's taught it, and the first time you encounter one, it's like the official regular expressions for emails, which takes 2 screens. And it looks like there's not a single Roman character in there. It comes from Perl, right? And the thing is, it's actually called regular for a reason. In French, we actually say rational expressions, because they're actually rational, believe it or not. And they're actually easy to learn. To this day, the most read article on our entire website knowledge base is finally mastering regular expressions in JavaScript. That and SSH keys, apparently. So it's really easy to learn, but you just have to sort of set aside your bias that, oh my God, you know, and actually take it one step at a time. And it takes a surprisingly small amount of concepts to actually write regular expressions that do a shit ton. It's just that JavaScript not letting us use extended syntax like carriage returns and indentation and comments means that every time a regular expressions do something quite advanced, it's going to require some documentation. You know? But many times we use regular expressions for tiny stuff like, give me all the emojis, that's it. It's going to take a regular expression this big and it's going to be fast as hell. And I guarantee there is no way you can do it by hand. No way. Regular expressions are your only way out.
Okay, well, that sounds.
And it makes you feel good at the end of the day. You go like, man, today I wrote regular expressions, and it worked. Well, my day's done. It's 10 a.m. My day is done.
Well, I think it's very exciting to see medieval paintings and regular expressions getting so much excitement at this conference.
Yeah, you never know what's coming.
That's not something I was expecting to.
Life is a mystery.
It is. It is. Well, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you all.